Good day, everyone. My name is Angel May de Monteverde, and I am here to discuss the summary of our lessons in the Child and Adolescent Learner and Learning Principles, ranges from weeks 10, week 11, and week number 12. So firstly is our lesson in week 10, which is our topic is about prenatal period. All the developmental theories which were lengthily discussed dwelt on the developmental process after birth. None of them was concerned with what development went on before birth. To make the description of human development complete, it may be good to understand the beginnings of the child and adolescent and how it all began in the process of the development inside the womb of a mother. We must learn how we all begin and created. So these are the stages of prenatal development. Firstly is the germinal period, which is from conception to 2 weeks. This includes the creation of the zygote, continued self-division, and the attachment of zygote to the uterine wall. So the following are the details of development during this period. So in 24 to 30 hours after fertilization, the male sperm and the female egg chromosome unite. 36 hours after fertilization, ovum zygote divides into 2. 48 hours or 2 days, 2 cells become 4 cells. In 72 hours, 4 cells become a small compact ball of 16 to 32 cells. In 96 hours or 4 days, hollow ball of 64 to 128 cells is formed. In 4 to 5 days, inner cells mass are still free in the uterus. In 6 to 7 days, blastocyst attaches to the wall of uterus, and in 11 to 15 days, blastocyst invades into uterine wall and becomes implanted in it. So, in 11 to 15 days, there happens the implantation. So, the next stage is the embryonic period or the prenatal development, which occurs 2 to 8 weeks. The zygote will become embryo. Organogenesis is the process of organ formation during the first 2 months of prenatal. So these are the 3 layers of the cells: the endoderm or the inner layer of the cell, which becomes the digestive and respiratory system. Next is the ectoderm or the outermost layer of the cell. This becomes the nervous, sensory receptors and skin parts, and the mesoderm or the middle layer, which develops into circulatory, skeletal, muscular, excretory, and reproductive system. So as the 3 layers of the embryo form, the support systems of the embryo develop rapidly. These are the 3 life support systems. Firstly is the placenta, which is a life support system that consists of disc-shaped group of tissues in which small blood vessels from the mother and the offspring intertwine but do not join. Next is the umbilical cord, which contains 2 arteries and 1 vein that connects the baby to the placenta, and lastly the amnion, or which is the bag or an envelope that contains a clear fluid in which the developing embryo flows. So these are the teratology and hazards of prenatal development. So when we say teratology, it is the field that investigates the causes of congenital birth defects. So teratogen is what causes the birth defects, which came from the Greek word tera, which means monster. So these are the hazards to prenatal development: prescription and non-prescription drugs, psychoactive drugs, environmental hazards, and maternal factors, also the paternal factors. So moving on to the next week, which is week 11, our topic is about physical development of infants and toddlers. So the period that comes after prenatal or antenatal stage is infancy, which in turn is followed by toddlerhood. Infancy and toddlerhood span the first 2 years of life. Between birth to first year of age, babies grow and develop at an outstanding rate. They learn to smile, roll over, sit up, wave, clap, pick objects, crawl, babble, and some may even start saying few words. Okay, so they learn to bond with and trust their caregivers, and they often understand more than they are able to communicate. Babies enjoy music, movement, and simple games like peekaboo or as they get older, they learn to express more emotions. So toddlers may be considered children that range from 1 year to 2 years old, and the end of toddler age is to be around ready for transition into preschool. So let's discuss about the cephalocaudal and proximodistal patterns. Cephalocaudal trend is the postnatal growth of the baby from conception to 5 months, in which the head grows more than the body. This cephalocaudal trend growth that applies to the development of 3 fetus applies in the first months of birth. Infants learn to use their upper limbs before their lower limbs. The same pattern occurs in the head area because of top parts of the head. The eyes and the brain grow faster than the lower parts, such as the jaw. Another is the proximodistal pattern. It is a trend of prenatal growth, which ranges from 5 months to birth, in which the fetus grows from the inside of the body outwards. This also applies in the first months of birth, as shown, followed by that of the hands and fingers. When referring to the motor development, the proximodistal trend refers to the development of motor skills from the center of the body outward. Talking about motor development, infants and toddlers begin to have reflexes to gross motor skills and fine motor skills. So, reflexes. Let's talk about reflexes. The newborn has some basic reflexes which are, of course, automatic and serve as survival mechanisms before they have the opportunity to learn. Many reflexes which are present at birth will generally subside within a few months as the baby grows and matures. There are many different reflexes. Some of the most common reflexes that baby have are as follows. So firstly is the sucking reflex. The sucking reflex is initiated when something touches the roof of the infant's mouth. Another is the rooting reflex, in which is the most evident when an infant cheek is stroked. Another, the gripping reflex, in which babies will grasp anything that is placed in their palm. Another is the curling reflex. When the inner sole of baby's foot is stroked, the infant responds by curling his or her toes. Another is the startle or moro reflex, in which infants will respond to sudden sounds or movements by throwing their arms and legs out and throwing their heads back. Another, the gallant reflex. The gallant reflex is shown when an infant middle or lower back is stroked next to the spinal cord. Another is the tonic reflex. The tonic neck reflex is demonstrated in infants who are placed on their abdomens. So, talking about gross motor skills, it is always a source of excitement for parents to witness dramatic changes in the infant's first year of life. The dramatic motor development is shown in babies unable to even lift their heads, to being able to grab things off the cabinet, to chase the ball, and to walk away from parent. Fine motor skills, or skills that involve a refined use of the small muscles controlling the hand, fingers, and thumb. The development of these skills allows one to be able to complete tasks such as writing, drawing, and buttoning. The ability to exhibit motor skills involve activities that involve precise eye-hand coordination. So let's move on to week 12, in which our topic is about cognitive development of infants and toddlers. So babies are not only growing physically during the first 2 years of life, but also cognitively or mentally. Every day, while they interact with and learn about their environment, they are creating new connections and pathways between nerve cells, both within their brains and between their brains and bodies. While physical growth and change is easily observed and measured in precise terms, such as in inches and pounds, cognitive change and development is a little harder to determine as clearly. Let's talk about the sensory motor development. Children go through a period of dramatic growth and learning. As kids interact with their environment, they are continually making new discoveries about how the world works. The cognitive development that occurs during this period takes place over a relatively short period of time, and involves a great deal of growth. Children not only learn how to perform physical actions such as crawling and walking, they also learn to have a great deal about language from the people with whom they interact. So, another is about the object permanence. The term object permanence is used to describe a child's ability to know that objects continue to exist even though they can no longer be seen or heard. If you have ever played a game of peekaboo with a very young child, then you probably understand how this works. When an object is hidden from sight, infants under a certain age often become upset that the item has vanished. This is because they are too young to understand that the object continues to exist even though it cannot be seen. Okay, let's talk about the language development. In 3 to 12 months, the baby will most likely cool and laugh, play with sounds, and begin to communicate with gestures like waving. Bubbling is an important development stage during the first year. Okay, in 12 to 18 months, children often say the first words with meaning. For example, when your child says dada, your child is actually calling for dad. In the next few months, your child will keep adding more words to their vocabulary. In 18 months to 2 years, their vocabulary has grown and they'll start to put two words together into short sentences. Your child will understand much of what you say, and you can understand what your child says to you, or like most of the time. In learning and remembering, Pavlov's classical condition and Skinner's operant conditioning have been proven to apply infants. All of us experience infantile amnesia, the inability to recall events that happened when we were young. In psychosexual theorist Sigmund Freud, he called it childhood amnesia. Not all the things that we can recall, but those memories will be shown to our conscious and subconscious mind. So, here is a summary of what infants and toddlers can do cognitively in the domain of language, pre-reading, and pre-math. So, in language or receptive language, in 6 months, an infant watches primary caregiver intently as she speaks to him or her. In 7 to 12 months, they will learn to understand no and points to family member when asked to do so. In 13 to 18 months, they will learn how to point the 5 parts of their body when asked to do so. They also will follow one-step instruction without need for gestures. In 19 to 24 months, they will learn how to point 5 name picture objects when asked to do so. In language, which is expressive, the child is able to use words and gestures to express his thoughts and feelings. In 6 months, they make gurgling, cooing, bubbling, or other vocal sounds. They use gestures like pointing, stretching, and etc. to indicate what he or she wants. In 7 to 12 months, they will repeat sounds produced by others, says meaningful words like papa, mama, to refer to specific persons, uses animal sounds to identify objects or events in the environment. In 13 to 18 months, they will speak in single words, say yes and no appropriately, uses words accompanied by gestures to indicate what he or she wants, and responds to simple questions with single words. In 19 to 24 months, they will use pronouns, uses possessive pronouns, says what he or she wants without accompanying these gestures, attempts to converse even if he cannot be clearly understood. So when talking about pre-reading and pre-math, the child is able to match identical objects, colors, shapes, and symbols. In 7 to 12 months, they were able to match identical objects like spoons, 2 spoons, or 2 balls. In 19 to 24 months, they will learn to match identical objects and identical pictures. Talking about their higher order mental abilities or the concept formation, the child develops basic concepts pertaining to objects, constancy, space, time, quantity, and etc., and uses this as the basis for understanding how materials are categorized in his or her environment. In 6 months, they will experiment with new objects or toys by banging or putting them in his mouth. And of course, they will look for direction of a fallen object. In 7 to 12 months, they will look partially in hidden objects and looks for completely hidden objects. In 13 to 18 months, they can tell whether something is hot or cold and can hand over one object when asked. In 19 to 24 months, they can tell which is shorter of two items, which is taller or longer of two items, which is bigger and nearer of two items. So, talking about higher ordered mental abilities, the child is able to understand the cause and effect relationships. Okay, this occurs in 19 to 24 months. They will enjoy constructing objects or structures out of manipulative toys like blocks, clay, or paper. They use toys or objects as symbol in play, like they pretend that the empty milk is a drum. Okay, they can also use the same toys or object in more than one way, or empty box as house, for example. So that ends the topics from week 10 to 12. Thank you for listening and God bless us all.